comedy, pop culture, and everything in between. By idiots, for idiots. Welcome, sinners. This is Sports Idiot Nation.
Welcome in, sinners. Today is Thursday, November 7th, and so that means it is another episode of Sports Idiot Nation, always joined by Miles Behind Enemy Lines and Mr. T.I. I am Adam Marino, and we have talked about how we find a way to get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into every single one of our episodes. Our group chat always has turtles, and we thought, you know what? Let's actually get into this because so many stories to tell regarding the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And, you know, speaking of, Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds.
Yeah, you better go get on that, Adam. Pretty some for us, too, though. But yeah, Turtles, we're sitting here every episode. All we do is clown on, hey, look, somehow we derailed and somehow we're talking about Turtles again. So we decided, let's do a whole nother episode, you know? Ah, look at that. Look at that.
Pizza Dude made it. That was like 9 seconds. That's pretty damn impressive.
He had the address right and everything, you know?
Yeah. 122 and an 8. 122 and an 8.
What you got? Some sardines and banana on there, like, you know, Turtle. They always got some eclectic choices on their pizza. You know, anchovies.
No anchovies. You put anchovies on that, dude.
That's Casey Jones, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. But yeah, Turtles. I'm a big, huge fan of Turtles. Hell, the first comic debuted when I was 5 years old in 1984 in May, like right around my birthday. I still remember being with my grandmother in Woolworths, just to date myself a little bit, being in Woolworths and looking over and seeing this comic on the comic rack. I was always into comics, young age, spending my allowance on comics. Anytime I get my hands on comics, I did. And I remember seeing this and I was just like, what is this? You know? It was color. The comic was black and white, but the cover was color. They didn't have a lot of money back then to kind of splurge, and so they would go out on the covers, and it was, you know, these 4 turtles with weapons wearing all red bandanas. And I remember flipping through the pages and seeing them stabbing people and cutting them up, and I was just like, what is this? You know? And naturally, you know, when you're 5, 6 years old, you ask your grandmother to buy you things, and, you know, your grandmother buys it, and man, the rest is history, you know. I happened to
You're
one
like,
day,
what is this? But you knew you were hooked as a 5-year-old, seeing them dicing.
Yeah, I was hooked. I just I had a tendency to gravitate towards things that were probably way too probably advanced for my age, probably stuff I just didn't need to see, you know. I mean, like, hell, RoboCop is my all-time favorite movie, and I was 8 years old when it came out. I had no business seeing that movie. But I mean, when the sequel came out, my mom took me and my brother to see it. I went back at the age, and my brother Paul was like 5 years old. I'm like, oh my God, you know. So Turtles were super important to me and my you know, my friends, my brother. We all had the figures. I know you guys had the figures. You know, I'm just and Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, love those guys. I mean, their personalities are so like contrasting. They are just polar opposite of one another. But they had this ingenious idea that was a joke. They were just sitting in their kitchen, trying to come up with something to pay the bills. That's really all it was. They were just like struggling to pay their bills, trying to come up with the next big thing. And they were eating pizza and they started drawing. And I think the story is either Peter Laird drew the first one or Kevin Eastman did. And it was a turtle and he passed it to the other and they drew it into a ninja. And they started adding weapons, and then they added others, and then they started doing incarnations of it. And so a lot of the earlier stuff, you'll see there's like 5 or 6 different styles of the Ninja Turtles. And that was all like them trying to basically figure out like what's going to hit, you know. But they never envisioned a million years it would be as big as it was. They were just like hoping that they would get some people interested. Here you go, 40 years later, it's an iconic property that's as recognizable as McDonald's or Mickey Mouse or, you know, Bluey or whoever, Paw Patrol. I mean, Turtles is still just as big as all
Sports Idiot Nation.
Idiot Nation, you know.
So because that's not my memory, and I joke that you are the elder statesman, but you are not that much older than me. However, I only know them as purple, red. I don't know them as
Orange.
all red. Yeah, orange. And what am I missing? We
Blue.
got
You didn't say blue.
and
did
blue.
You?
I don't know if people can see that there, but there you go.
Yeah.
There's all four, all red. That's the original Turtles. That's what it looked like. And I don't know if people can see this there. That is a autographed by Mr. Kevin Eastman himself, co-creator of the Ninja Turtles. This is probably one of my favorite possessions of my entire collection of anything I own. But yeah, so
that is awesome.
So they originally started out as the comic, and yeah, you're right. They the studio, the Cartoon Network, was like not the actual Cartoon Network, but Fox or whoever it was, were like, hey, you have a hot property here. How can we make it marketable for children? Because right now it's not very marketable for children. I mean, the language was adult, the violence was adult, the comedy, the humor was adult, everything about it was adult. It was never meant for kids. I mean, like I said, it was a tongue-in-cheek joke. And actually, a lot of people don't know this. So they are huge. Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, their favorite all-time comic is Daredevil, and Turtles is a parody of Daredevil. And their story is when Matt Murdock got blinded when he tried to save the girl from the accident and the chemicals. Apparently one of these canisters rolled into the sewer. And so if you go
TGRI?
Yeah, no, obviously not that, but
yeah.
So, but if you go into it, you have in Daredevil, you have the Ninja Clan, the villain clan was the hand. In Turtles, it's the foot. In Daredevil, his sensei was Stick. And here it's Splinter. I mean, it's a lot of people don't know.
Wow.
I mean, it literally is like a Daredevil parody, and they say that they're like, yeah, that was 100% what we were doing. Again, they did not envision it becoming this at all, right? So now they have this story where they're like
Daredevil by a mile.
Oh yeah, exactly right. Daredevil would love to be making the money that Turtles made, but and there's a lot of more parallels there to it, but like that's the main thing. The main thing is like, yeah, we kind of like hacked into the Daredevil story to create the Turtles, because you had Matt Murdock in Hell's Kitchen, which is the fictional portion of New York, the boroughs, and that's obviously where the Turtles reside. I mean, it's all there, but the Cartoon Network, when they made the cartoon, their studios were like, well, let's change all this up because we need to be able to differentiate between the Turtles. So they gave them a different color. They gave them a letter on their belt buckle, they made them have catchphrases, cowabunga dude, totally tubular, all that, because you had the Simpsons were big. They were like, they knew what they were doing. And April O'Neil was originally African-American. Baxter Stockman was originally African-American. Studios were like, let's make April O'Neil this redhead white girl from Channel 2 News. Like,
let's make her Megan Fox years later.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, so they're just now getting the stories right on the Turtles now. They're actually like making Baxter Stockman, African-American, making April Afro-American, and it's funny how once the studio gets involved and they're like, hey, we can make a lot of money with this property, but how can we make it digestible for the world we live in today? And what was that? We're looking at 1987 maybe is the cartoon, I think, something like that.
So that launched, the concept was 87, then it launched October of 88.
Yeah.
And then in that time frame, the action figures got big. From 88 to 92, did over $1 billion in sales. Way to go, Playmates.
A lot of that money, not $1 billion of it, but a lot of that was spent by the Marino household. I had Rat King. No one had Rat King.
Oh, I had Rat King. He's my favorite Turtles villain. Here you go. Here's the party wagon. The OG party wagon.
Leatherhead? Did you have Leatherhead, the alligator?
Adam, I have every single figure, and I still have every single figure. It's very depressing. Every time my wife sees it in the closet, she's like, can we just do something with these? And I'm like, no, never.
So
never ever.
I have to give a shout out
to the grandchildren.
I got to give a shout out to someone that Miles knows.
Been this big.
And I'll go into this story. But David Zico. So in the 88 to 92 time frame, I was best friends with David's brother, Paul, who ended up marrying my first cousin, Aaron, who Miles also knows. And shout out to Paul, because Paul was in our original podcast with Miles, which is how this whole thing, Sports Idiot Nation, got started, because Miles and I had a podcast before. So this is all full circle. But David Zico was, and still is, as he is still alive, a few years younger than me. Now, when I'm 8, 9 years old, that makes a much bigger difference. And every time I would go over to their house, I would bring all my turtles over. And they would want me to, at 9 years old, they were asking me to just have them. Like, can we have your turtles? I'm like, I'm not even an adult yet. Like, no, you can't have them. Like, it was just crazy. And unbeknownst to me, years later, I found out that my mom secretly bought them all their own turtles.
Dude,
and I didn't even realize it. But this is that 88 to 92 time frame where my journey with the turtles starts, because I was not aware of the all red, any of that. The cartoons definitely is what got me. And then what truly got me like to another level is the movies, because the idea of them coming out when they did and how they were not for kids was a huge deal, because I know that none of us were like full on adults at that time when the movies came out. However, if you watch them now as an adult, it is very adult. I mean,
well, they fought.
You know what I mean?
Director fought for it. So I'm not 100% mistaken. I think it was the director's first feature film. I think he came from doing music videos. I want to say he did like the Aha's Take on Me, and maybe a couple other stuff. But studios just, they kept passing on it. They just would not make the movie, and everybody wanted to make the movie kid friendly. And he fought tooth and nail until finally they agreed. They said, all right. And they got with Kevin and Peter, and he gave them, or they both gave them the story that they think they should tell. There are bits and pieces of it took from it. I mean, a lot of the whole parallel of the comics of there's a series called The Book of New York. There's like three episodes of it, or 3 issues of it. And it's like from the antique store burning down through the farmhouse all the way back to the rooftop, like all that. It's the whole story. And it's, to me, being a comic enthusiast, it's like the most comic friendly, comic to movie adaptation outside of maybe some of the Christopher Nolan Batman stuff. I mean, it's just, and obviously looking into the Marvel universe now, it's so fine tuned, like they know what they're doing. But back then, people weren't taking risks on comic book movies, and it was, God, what we were saying. It was at the time the highest grossing independent film of all time, up until 1999's Blair Witch. So, New Line Cinema was like, okay, let's see what this is. We'll give you free range, make it violent. If you remember, there's 4 moments of cussing in the movie. If you watch the second one, there's 0 moments of that, and there's parents got very angry about the first one. Some parents walked out, and so the second one, if you go back and watch it, it's really corny on purpose.
Kino makes it silly.
Yeah, Michelangelo, they didn't let him use nunchucks. They wouldn't let him, and that's why in that one scene he's fighting with sausages. He's like, combat cold cuts. But they tried to make it more like the cartoon at that point.
Yeah, definitely more silly.
And I still enjoy the second one, but it's
because Vanilla Ice.
Well, of course, I mean, but it's just it's not. It's still fun, but it's just not that good of a flick. Like they couldn't get the rights to Bebop and Rocksteady, so they had to make up Toko and Razor, which is so stupid because now they are a part of the universe. Like they're on all the video games. They're and I'm just like, why did you have to create these characters for characters that already existed in your universe? And apparently the story is that once they started making the cartoons, they started coming up with more characters, and they didn't necessarily have the rights to them. So they didn't necessarily have the rights to Bebop and Rocksteady. And a lot of times
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they would create an action figure for an episode to sell the action figure, and that person would never return an episode ever again. And it became this money-making vehicle, I'd go to KB Toys every time I was at the mall and
Same.
filtering through the figures and be like, oh, a new one,
Same.
And you had like
that.
you
That's
had
cool.
like
We have the
Usagi
same
Yojimbo.
memories.
You had like
In the
Usagi
mall.
Yojimbo. Oh yeah, KB Toys, man, that was the jam. But you had like Usagi Yojimbo is another character that was like a crossover, and he was another comic. And they have this is a really cool story. So they were at a comic convention when they were both Turtles was starting to take off, and he was paired next to the creator of Usagi Yojimbo, and he's Samurai Rabbit, and they hit it off, and he was like, hey, what about getting you on an episode or whatever. And so they got with Playmates, and Playmates was like, yeah. So they created another character for a comic that really nobody even knew and threw it into Turtles. And, now, I mean, Usagi Yojimbo he's not a household name like Turtles, but anybody who is a follower of the Turtles is a big fan of that. And that wouldn't have never happened if it wasn't for Playmates, I mean, the action figures were money, man. It was printing money.
Oh, they were so good. And I don't mean like the craftsmanship, but like they just were so good and so fun to collect and set them up. And like you cross them over and play as a kid with your Transformers and your G.I. Joes and have them all together and play. Like that was just something you did. It was so, so cool. And the movies just, like I said, took it to another level because you felt like as a kid that all of a sudden like, wait, I shouldn't be watching this. But for whatever reason, your parents let you, like it wasn't a big deal. Like it was still, what's crazy, it was rated PG. The original Turtles movie in 1990 is rated PG, which there's no way now would be, if it came out that way, it would be PG-13 for sure.
Yep. Right there, my first memory of TMNT.
I mean,
so well done.
Just the part where Casey Jones turns on the trash compactor, it's like, whoops. I mean, that's we all know that Shredder got away, but he technically for a moment murdered Shredder. And he laughed about it. He was like, whoops.
Oops. Yeah.
And like, that ain't going to fly in a PG movie today, no way.
And just the cussing and stuff, and just like the themes. I feel like that's what it would be called now, is adult themes. Like,
well, there's a new, I don't know if it's going to be live action or a blend or it's going to be animated, but they're doing a movie for The Last Ronin, and it's going to be 100% full adult. I mean, that's a very like dystopian, tragic story where the only one left is, I mean, I don't want to ruin it for anybody if they hadn't read the story, but there's only one turtle left. All the others have been murdered, and he's seeking vengeance on everybody. And it's a phenomenal comic. It's like a 5-book series. And I always like, please make this into something. And they finally greenlit it. So, which is cool because Nickelodeon owns the rights. So Nickelodeon knows they're looking at Deadpool and they're looking at the stuff that like, they're like, okay, hey, there's a market out there for rated R comic book stuff. And we need to tap into it,
That's crazy. Miles, I want to find out your first memory, but real quick before I do, I want to point out a couple things about the movie that to me, looking back, is still mind-boggling. Just a couple things. The budget was $13.5 million and the box office did $202 million.
For a movie that studios were like, I don't know, this sounds kind of silly.
Yeah, real silly.
Yeah.
But Miles, what, like, I know as you're a little bit younger, like obviously the movie came out and you didn't watch it like when it first came out, obviously.
Right. Obviously, because I wasn't born quite yet. My mother was pregnant with me. But as I just alluded to a couple of minutes ago, it was my first memory being PG. So when I was 4, maybe 5 years old, renting it for the first time on VHS from the local Scott's. Adam, do you remember Scott's,
which is now
grocery
Kroger
store, which is now Kroger, which
49 cents.
Know what Kroger is.
49 cents to rent a
dirt
video.
cheap, and I will always remember that rental store within the Scots, and you get a VHS, and just thought it was
At the
so cool as a
grocery.
kid. Yep,
The grocery store.
absolutely. So have that and getting home and putting it in, and before that, you show the production company and the New Line Cinema going in. And again, I'm a little kid, so I'm like, what? This looks like Home Alone. It's like a house or a wall falling, and there's these ladders that are falling next to it, and then there's a
The
ladder
film.
next to the wall. And then when I became a teenager and saw maybe like Rush Hour or another film like that, I realized, oh, that's film script. That's not a ladder. So that was, as a little kid, again, my mind doesn't click like it should for someone watching a PG movie like that. So that is my first memory. And then, of course, with last week being Halloween, as we talked about, like our costumes growing up, again, being a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle for Halloween later that year, whether it was like 94 or 95, something like that. And I remember my sister, who's a few years older than me, got a red one. I was like, no, I don't want to be Raphael. Like, first of all, his size that kind of like looked like this, I thought looked weird as a kid. As an adult, they're pretty badass.
Well, yeah.
Arguably one of the most
I'd
badass
be
ones. But I was
Raphael.
like, oh, he's like, the hothead. Oh, I'm a kind kid. But I think I always wanted to be Leonardo, the blue, the leader of the group, and whatnot. And he didn't have the nunchucks, because most kids are like, oh, I want to be Michelangelo, and he's the happy-go-lucky kind of a numbskull guy, and the most dudest of the dudes with the orange and the nunchucks. But I convinced my sister she needed to be purple, because she's a girl anyways with Donatello. She's a smart girl anyways, but she can carry the bow staff.
There's nothing wrong with Donatello.
So the movie itself, like in the time, sure, I've seen it many times later, but the first time I saw it, I don't remember any of it. Maybe a couple of lines about forgiveness is divine, but one never pays full price for late pizza. Obviously, that everyone remembers that line. And then from that movie, I thought Ninja Turtles and Domino's Pizza were like the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like I thought like Ninja Turtles like actually owned Domino's Pizza. Like,
they made the company.
Like that's how the mind of a 4 or a 5-year-old works. You got to understand that. Like I figured out later, oh, Domino's is just crappy pizza. So
Domino's had
that exact reason.
They had an endorsement deal big time with it, and they were
for sure.
They were like,
yeah, no, and again, because I saw like commercials with it later.
Well, yeah, but
I think
a 4 or 5-year-old doesn't know.
Movie, but I don't know. I think it's one in the same.
But then it switched. It switched to Pizza Hut, and so when the Turtles 2 came, the arcade game came out on consoles. It was already in the arcade, and then they made it on consoles. They put a coupon on the back for a free personal pan pizza, and it's like on the instruction booklet and everything. I see a lot of like Nintendo collectors and stuff. They're like, I wonder if I can still use this,
But it's so classic.
But like, of the movie, like, you guys, you're talking about your, who you were for Halloween. Like, I was always Donatello. I kind of naturally gravitated to Donatello. A lot of kids.
But you're a nerd, like you're a gadget dude. Yeah, and you're kind of you're the inventor of Idiot Nation, so you might as well be the inventor of the.
I'm
a
proud
kind of dude, right?
Proud inventor of idiots.
Yeah,
perfect. But yeah, I love Donatello. A lot of kids gravitated to Michelangelo, obviously, because like you said, party dude, But at the time, I was still, really big into skateboarding. I was still, skating on a regular. That was a huge part of it as well. I mean, they just found so many ways to tie into kids at that time frame, and they just did it so well. But like the scenes in the movie, like you talking about the adult themes and stuff, like from about the antique shop battle on, it's not a kid's movie. Like up until that point, there's a little bit of it, but from that point on, like when Raphael basically gets beaten to death and they take him,
just the scariness of it.
Yeah,
like
and
going through the sewers in the dark. That's not PG.
And Leonardo feeling the guilt and feeling responsible for that. Like there was a lot of like human emotions and human like
it's adult content. It just is.
But in the comics, so what's interesting, like that whole story is actually switched in the movie, and I don't know why they did it. But in the movie and in the comics, it's actually Leonardo that gets basically beaten to death, and they go to the farm and they save him and all that. But in the movie, they made it Raphael, and I don't know if that was just to build up the dynamic between him and Leonardo, because that still exists in today. Leonardo and Raphael still argue with each other because. Right. And in the new iteration of the comics, really the cartoon, like Raphael is the leader. Like Leonardo is still the vocal leader, but Raphael is like the muscle, like the leader of them, you know. And they've done that like nice little transition there. But yeah, the movie was like from that point on, it's nothing but adult situations, adult themes. They do crack jokes when they're on the rooftop, but I mean. Shredder has the blade to Leonardo's neck. I mean, to his neck, pointing on it. You know,
he dies.
Weapons. Yeah. He dies. You know, and that's another thing. They question themselves. Like they hesitate throwing the weapons. Like they wait and they're like, and toss it. And that right there, another like any other kids show or anything, it would have just been like, let him go. You know, and they're still wrestling with the fact like. We can still take this guy, you know, even if we lose one of us. Like that was the whole kind of thing there, you know. But then, what do they say? I know one thing, you know, this guy knows where Splinter is, and it all flips at that, you know.
Well, and that's fascinating, T.I., because it's like talking about the gray area, like they hold on to it. They're thinking it through like not an abstract concept, but more of an adult concept, obviously, of that gray area between right and wrong. Whereas with little kids, it's black and white. So yeah. I think that's fascinating. They didn't dumb that down.
No, not at all. That rooftop scene is just phenomenal. You know, and Shredder, I mean, hey, let's give him some props there. I mean, he's fighting all those turtles wearing all that stuff. You know, that's a lot.
He never has to ask for a can opener.
Yeah. What does he say? Somebody needs to remind him that we're the good guys.
And just there's so many scenes that we talk about as far as not being a PG movie. We deliver a message for you, Miss O'Neill.
Oh yeah.
Shut it.
Yeah.
Slaps
that
like that scare tactic, the scariness of it again, like, and when she's like knocking him with her purse and like all that, like that, just I know it doesn't show, like it's not like bloody or it's not, but still the intensity of it is wild.
Dude pops open a switchblade. I mean, you're not gonna see that. It's some stuff, you know. I mean, dude. Flat out is like switchblade, like going right at her, you know. But
it's like modern day, like DC movies, the darker, edgier side. Obviously, it's, you know, it was the Mirage Studios, and now Nickelodeon. Think about Nickelodeon now has the rights to a show like that.
They're not crazy. Stupid. They know, and that story is interesting too. So apparently, Kevin and Peter at some point agreed to go their separate ways, and when that whole situation came up about selling to Nickelodeon, that had a lot to do with it. And it was kind of like one of those things they never really said they wanted to do, but once they got to the point to where they had realized they wanted to do different things, because Kevin Eastman still does Turtle stuff today. He has a whole line of Turtles comics under the IDW line, and so he's still doing it, but they made out like bandits on that. And yeah, Peter Laird just really didn't want to do it anymore. He kind of had lost like all the love for it, while Kevin Eastman was still like, this is my baby. Like, you know,
Nickelodeon came a long way from Guts and Salute Your Shorts for sure.
Camp on, I wanna.
Yeah. And Nick at Night.
But
I grew up on Nick at Night.
But I mean, Turtles has crossed over so many different, I mean, you had the band, you had a live action band, went on tour, coming out of your shells. They were just
insane.
They had a ice skating. They had a ice capades thing at one point. Like they hit everything. They were like, hey, we are now in there like Mickey Mouse and Sesame Street. So
it's an industry.
Why not reap all the benefits, you know? And
so
that album's really bad. I still have the VHS. I have a VHS of behind the scenes, the making of the tour.
Oh God!
There's a song you guys have to do.
Why does that exist?
It is the most weirdest, unnecessary, strangest thing. that they've ever done. And it's like they have all these kids watching this thing, and they have Splinter come out and do this solo song, and it's like skipping stone, skipping stone. I mean, it's like, is this Bruce Springsteen or is this Splinter? Like, what is going on, you know? But I remember as a kid just being like, I don't know, I guess it's cool, but it's Turtles, so it's great, you know? But they have like they have like dancers on stage. They have like guys wearing pizza delivery costumes dancing. They're doing like pirouettes and like, and it's not a bunch of chicks wearing pizza costumes. It's a bunch of dudes. It made it even weirder. It was like, what's going on, you know?
But hey, it's Turtles, so
they have the song Pizza Power. Pizza Power, flying saucers in the sky. Pizza Power.
I do remember.
That's what makes me feel all right.
Just terrible writing. The three of us could have came up with a better song.
I ate that up.
Definitely could have.
Yeah. Well, all right, viewers, if you're watching still, if you haven't clicked off now, make sure you hop on YouTube and Google the Coming Out of Our Shells tour live.
T.I. and AI together could have made
the weirdest thing.
Yes.
So
Shredder even has a song.
The Shredder. So, all right, T.I., let's catch up on where we're at now, because a lot of us still remember when they rebooted it. We joked about Megan Fox earlier. Remember when that reboot came about and they were just different, and then where we're at now, because they're still making kind of in that world, they're still making Turtles movies, you know, even in 2024. But what started that? It was the Megan Fox. When was that?
Well, that was Michael Bay. Michael Bay did 2 films. Well, he produced them. He didn't direct them. A lot of people think he directed them just because they're not that good at movies. But he just bankrolled them. A lot of people think that Michael Bay directs a lot of stuff. He really doesn't these days. He just bankrolls stuff and makes sure that you put extra explosions in them. You know, he loves his explosions.
Hollywood shots. Get the EOD guys in there.
I mean, he catches a lot of flack, but it's like he's the one that has the big name kid property. It's like you can't make a Transformers movie without having a bunch of explosions. Like, come on, man, you know, like give the guy some slack a little bit, you know.
Right.
But yeah, no, so like I guess like to me now where they're at now is the Michael Bay films that I guess that license still ended, and they are now back doing just Nickelodeon-based films, and Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg have the rights to doing the films, and they're doing the animated stuff, and they're great. Like the Turtles animated movie was great. The fight scenes, the music, the movie was choreographed by Atticus Ross from Nine Inch Nails. And Trent Reznor. I think both of them did the soundtrack for it, and they incorporated all this classic 90s hip hop. Like it's a really great animated film, and the storyline is accurate, the characters are pretty accurate, and then they've made now a series on, I think, Paramount. Yeah, Paramount has all the rights to the streaming, but and it's a cartoon series based in that realm, but it's post the movie. So like a lot of the first episodes are dealing with stories in the movie and showing the aftermath and now why they have this. And it shows like a lot of like what the individual characters were dealing with and stuff. And it's really well thought out. I'm pretty impressed with it. I try to give all the Turtle cartoons some love because they're just important to me. But obviously the first one is the best. You'll never touch it. But I do think that this new incarnation has some like stay power. I think it can last as long as they keep doing it the way they're doing it. The animation is cool. Yeah, it's just different. It's just not the same old. And I think that's what happened with Turtles, is that people got a little burnt out because it was the same old. And now they've really switched it up, and the villains are great. The way they told the stories of the villains in this last one were just awesome. And the voices, doing all the voices for the villains was just through the roof. I mean, you had Hannibal Buress and Seth Rogen and just all these people doing. I mean, Seth Rogen was doing Bebop, and he was just awesome. I mean, it was like, I was like, damn, that is what Bebop should sound like, you know? I mean,
I remember in the video game, say your pues, Turtles.
Yeah.
Yeah, Corey Feldman,
Yeah.
voicing original, from the movies.
And actually, you mentioned Keno from the second one. He actually was, I think he did all of the in-suit action for Donatello or Raphael 1 in the first one. And the second one, they were like, you're too good. They brought him back. And then they were like, how about we make you a character? And so they made up Keno, which is still a kind of silly character, but it's like, I think it was more so giving him his moment to shine there, because
give him a shout out almost.
I mean, wearing those suits and doing all those, I mean, those are real choreographed fight scenes. Like there's obviously no CGI in that time frame, so.
Right. That second movie opens with him where he's delivering the pizza and the two girls say dream on, and when he says, well, when I do dream, I'll dream of something skinnier.
Yeah. And I mean that too, like they're not gonna let that fly in a kids movie today. Fat shaming? Nope.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
We're here for it.
But I mean, but yeah, so that kid's name, I think his name is Ernie Reyes, I think.
Ernie, because he was in Three Ninjas too. Surf
That's
Ninjas
right. Right.
Oh, I know my pop culture.
Three ninjas, surf ninjas. There was a bunch of Three Ninjas, kick back, Three Ninjas.
Whatever. Yeah.
Three Ninjas, surf again.
Ernie.
Knuckle up.
My guy Ernie.
Three Ninjas, the fourth. Like, I don't think they made that, but
the fourth ninja.
Yeah. It's like Turtles. They down the line, man. Once they started running its course, they introduced a female turtle. They introduced another turtle at some point. The same people that did the Power Rangers had the rights to the Turtles, and they were doing a Turtles Next mutation. And yeah, they introduced Venus de Milo or whatever, or whoever, and
Flytrap, I think.
Yeah, that's when you knew that it wasn't
Flytrap.
Yeah, you knew at that point. You were like, all right, turtles are going to disappear for a while, and then they're going to come back and be reincarnated, because this is going down a Jump the Shark, Happy Days track right now.
Right. So. Wild. Man, let me give a quick reminder to follow on all the social medias, Sports Idiot Nation, wherever you get your social media. Remember, new episodes of the podcast are every Monday and Thursday. Today, we're talking Ninja Turtles because I don't know how it happened. I think originally, if you check out episode 1, I think it randomly came up as a joke, and then in episode 2 it came up, and then we're like, well, now we're almost looking for ways to bring up Ninja Turtles. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but if you look at a lot of our posts on social media, they don't always make sense, and I think that's why we have so many subscribers. So speaking of that, be sure to like and subscribe, share with a fellow idiot. If you enjoy this conversation, be sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when new content drops. All right. So what is your favorite, man, I was just thinking through this, like, I don't want to say either favorite character or favorite, like, part of a movie, or what's your favorite dynamic of how they did, how they told Splinter's story, or I don't know, just what is your favorite thing about the Turtles, Miles, and then T.I.?
Well, I think it's the mere fact that Playmates made the action figures. Just how hilarious that is, that the little kids' toys took on this monstrosity of what became a major franchise, and then turned out over $1 billion in less than 5 years, is just mind-blowing. Again, I mentioned this on episode 3 about how I believe it was Hulu did the toys that built America, and they talk about that whole entire backstory of the guys, just kind of as a joke, coming up, throwing off ideas off the wall, and coming up, what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, how ridiculous is that? And then they're pitching it to everyone under the sun, rejected. And of course, as they all go, all the stories go, their last ditch effort, I think the 30-second organization company they went to finally decided, and it was one random lady who was like, "Oh, I think this is great," and then her boss was mad, but they still had to roll with it because they signed off on it, and then boom, 5 years later, she's a genius.
Yeah, that show you're talking about, that's a great episode. I love watching that show. And the doing the movies one too, the movies that made us, and they're both those series are great. But yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I've only seen it one time, but I think like basically the guy that ended up coming to them was like, "Look, I can sell this thing. Like, trust me, believe in me, give me a chance." And then it, like Miles said, he went to everybody, and everybody's like, "No." And then finally, like, there was one more shot, and it worked out, and the rest is history. But it's if anybody has Netflix, definitely check that out. That's a really cool episode. God, so for me, I mean, one thing about the cartoon, obviously, like I was, introduced to him through the comics first. Like in the comics, like one of the first like 4 issues. I keep saying episodes, it's damn TV, but I mean, Leonardo stabs Shredder through the stomach, twists his sword sideways just to make sure he's dead, and then you go to the cartoon and Shredder's like a bumbling fool, like he's supposed to be very like scary, but he's really like, if you think about it, he's always like, "Oh, Krang, I was wanting to do this. Oh,
rats foiled again."
It's kind of like the Destro Cobra Commander parallel there, So like they took a lot of liberty there, but what I do think that the cartoon did real well is they humanized all of the villains, even from Krang to everyone. Like Krang was always depressed because he wanted a body. He wanted to be accepted. He wanted to be a part of the world. Like his planet he's from, they're just all a bunch of brains called Utrons. And he obviously was like, "No, I want to be a part of the society." Of course, he wanted to rule everybody, but deep down, he just wanted a body. He just wanted to be human, I mean, in every episode, he's crying about his body, "Shredder, I just want my body," And then so like everything, the Rat King, the Rat King is my favorite Turtles villain, but they humanized him so well, and they made him likable without being just completely like off the wall creepy and grotesque. It's like we got this guy who lives in the sewer and hangs out with rats, but it still made him an enjoyable character, in the show. And I just think like that was the thing. Like Leatherhead was a great character. They even made Baxter Stockman a great character. His parallel to the comics is a lot different. He didn't turn into a fly in the comics. Like that didn't happen. He created the Mouser robots, and they were originally just to put out, it was exterminating business or whatever. And then obviously, Shredder and his team found him and were like, "I'm going to hold you hostage and make you work for me," pretty much. In the comics, right. I mean, the cartoon, it didn't work out like that. The same thing. He held him hostage, turned him into a fly, but that was cool too. Like you felt bad for him. Like and then as that cartoon progressed, not the one we were talking about, but like the 2002 one, maybe, Baxter Stockman got to the point to where he was like tortured and experimented on by Shredder, and got to the point where he was just a literally brain with eyes inside of a floating container. And it's like, that's still really dark. That's like extra dark,
Like, whoa.
So I just think they always did a real good job of like, yeah, you have these heroes, you have these turtles, but it's not just about the turtles. You're going to love April. You're going to love even Vern and Irma. You're going to love the boss at Channel 2. Like, we're going to give every character a voice. We're going to make it. They had action figures for all of them. I mean, they just did it so well. They were like, hey, I know somebody out there wants an Irma action figure. Who cares if we only sell 5,000 of them? It's costing us nothing to make. Like Miles said, made $1 billion from these things. Who cares if one of them doesn't hit? If little Susie wants to be Irma, let's let her be Irma. So they really like thought that out. They didn't just put some stuff out there to make money. Like they thought the whole thing through. The package art was phenomenal. The stories, the little cutout things, you could cut out little cardboard about the characters and all that. It wasn't just like today's toys. I mean, for my son, I'm buying him action figures and stuff all the time. And it's just, you get a box and that's it. You don't even get a weapon half the time. The Turtles, you got a whole setup. You got like 5 ninja stars. You got the weapons. You even got the like background thing to like hold the weapons. I mean, it was just well thought out. I mean, I remember the very first time I saw the figure in the store. I mean, I was already familiar with the comics, and I saw the figure and was like, what is this? And I still remember being at my grandmother's house, just playing, loving just nonstop playing with it for hours, one figure. And then I bought a foot soldier. So the first thing I had was either Donatello or Raphael. And then I had a foot soldier. And then that was it. I had to have a foot soldier. And then as the cartoon became popular, you had to have multiple foot soldiers. So I think at some point I had like 5 total foot soldiers, Yeah. But it's funny how it makes you, as a kid, it just gave you this warm, fuzzy feeling that was like unlike anything that we had yet. I mean, G.I. Joe, Voltron, Mask, like all of it was great, but none of it was Turtles. None of it was like Ninja Turtles.
Right.
And I'll go back sometimes at night and watch just some old G.I. Joe episodes on YouTube. And it's still good, but it just doesn't have the feeling that going back and watching a Turtles episode does for me.
Yeah, same. Turtles still for me is just that it's Transformers and Turtles for me for sure. Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing is the cartoon and the movies, what the movies just did. And really the first one, because the second one was more silly and the third one was just like such a reach. It's not even worth talking through enough. But the first episode or first movie was so good with how they did Casey Jones and just Danny, the teenager who was misguided, and the dad ended up firing April, and like what a great plot. And
and the chief of police. Oh, that guy. He's phenomenal.
Like Chief Wiggum.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, he really was the same character. He's he's like English April O'Neil. English.
Yeah, it was
Danny. Danny was a little rat, but he was supposed to be like
great character though.
Yeah, they wanted you to kind of feel sympathy for him, but also not like him,
because he gives the money back at the end. Yeah. So that was good.
And Casey Jones is great. Elias Cote, I don't know what his last name is.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it.
He is so good. The park battle with him and Raphael. Like
a Jose Canseco bat. Tell me you didn't pay money for this.
Yeah, and that too. Like, unless you're, a baseball fan at that frame, like a lot of kids are going to know who the hell Jose Canseco was.
Right.
They just really, they just nailed it, man. It's it'll still to this day will always be my most comic friendly adaptation I've ever seen from a movie. Because I know the story by heart. And when you know a story by heart and you go to the movie and you see it told differently, you're sometimes like, you feel jaded. And I just remember being like, that was phenomenal. I mean, I was 11 years old, but the cussing too just made me feel like, okay, hey, this is what I've been reading. This is what I've been reading for the last 6 years,
Yeah, well, I think T.I. is going to start his own Turtles podcast, because this is going for 5 hours. But be sure to like and subscribe, follow Sports Idiot Nation. We will see you on Monday. Okay, all you sinners, follow Sports Idiot Nation on TikTok, X, and Instagram. Like us on Facebook, and remember, the most fun way to watch us is on YouTube every Monday and Thursday. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you can be updated when new content drops. Remember, the podcast can also be found on the usual suspects of Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Always remember, don't be an idiot.
Sinner.